Got to talk about Shedeur Sanders. Deion Sanders was on a podcast recently and accidentally let it out that the Eagles wanted to draft Shedeur Sanders, and he also turned them down, much like he did the Ravens, due to not wanting to be a backup to a franchise quarterback.
Shedeur Sanders made one choice before the NFL draft that no one saw coming. He turned down 2 top teams, and now things aren't going the way he expected. What really happened, and why are some saying it could ruin his future? Let's walk through the full story. The rise, the doubts, the draft drama, and where Shedeur Sanders might go from here. Shedeur Sanders isn't just Deion's son. He carved his own spotlight long before entering the NFL landscape. At Jackson State, he threw for over 3,200 yards as a freshman, earning the Jerry Rice Award and making waves as one of the most exciting young passers coming out of an HBCU program. Then came his transfer to Colorado. In the Big 12, he posted gaudy numbers. He became the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, gained national attention, and fans began projecting him as a first-round quarterback. He was flashy, confident, and had that signature swagger that made highlight reels go viral every weekend. People started to believe he wasn't just riding his father's name, he was building his own legacy. Some analysts openly backed him. Dan Orlovsky, a former NFL quarterback turned analyst, declared the tape doesn't lie when defending Sanders against criticisms of his slide. That speech became a rallying cry for Sanders fans. His talent and playmaking flashes were undeniable, even if the edges weren't yet sharpened. But behind the highlight plays and the praise, not everyone was convinced. Even in that hype, cracks were forming. Scouts flagged concerns. He was sacked 94 times over 2 seasons at Colorado. It wasn't just a number to NFL teams, it was a signal. Was it the offensive line, or was Shedeur holding onto the ball too long? Was he missing reads, taking unnecessary hits? These weren't just concerns. They were red flags. Questions about his arm strength, decision speed, and mechanical consistency followed. Some pointed out his release looked stiff under pressure. Others questioned how he'd adapt to reading NFL defenses, which move faster, disguise more, and punish even the smallest delay. Shedeur entered the NFL with big promise and just as big questions. Most expected him to go in the first round. Many believed he could be in the top 10. Yet he went undrafted on day 1. He didn't go in rounds 2, 3, or 4. Finally, the Browns selected him in round 5, pick 144. That fall fueled scrutiny, and the whispers turned into headlines. Why did he slide so far? Some said the spotlight on Deion sometimes overshadowed the quarterback himself, creating added pressure. Others argued teams balked because of perceived flaws in interviews and intangibles. An anonymous coach reportedly called Sanders entitled, criticized his body language, and said he tended to blame teammates. After the draft, it was revealed that both the Baltimore Ravens and Philadelphia Eagles had shown interest. However, Sanders reportedly conveyed he did not wish to be a backup to Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts. He and his team wanted a clear path to starting. They weren't looking for patience. They were looking for an opportunity. Deion Sanders later confirmed those calls occurred and that his son rejected them, believing he should go somewhere with a real shot to play earlier. He said, "Why would you go back up Lamar for 10 more years?" That comment went viral, and with it, the criticism. Because what Shedeur and his camp may have seen as confidence, others viewed as overreach. Coaches started wondering, was this player already too convinced of his own star power? And if he wasn't open to sitting and learning behind MVP-caliber quarterbacks, what did that say about how he approached growth and development? Once he landed in Cleveland, the criticisms grew sharper. One of the starkest lines came from an unnamed NFL coach who said Sanders plays on tape delay and is incredibly late delivering the ball. That means rather than anticipating or reacting fluidly, he tends to wait, process, then act. By then, the timing is off. His internal clock lags. On many plays, the ball is not where it needs to be. That kind of delay isn't subtle. Coaches say they see it in real time. A former quarterback weighed in saying, "The tape is clear as day when you watch Sanders' flaws. When you blend that with the preseason evidence, it becomes a harder pill to swallow." Against the Rams in the preseason finale, Sanders completed just 3 of 6 passes for 14 yards and was sacked 5 times. That performance is often invoked as proof the critiques aren't just theory, they're manifesting in live reps. These aren't just rookie struggles. They're the kind of issues that make front offices rethink future investments. And with so much hype surrounding his name, every mistake hits a little harder. Imagine an alternate scenario. Sanders accepts the role of a backup in Baltimore or Philadelphia. He sits behind Jackson or Hurts for a couple of seasons. He learns the speed of the NFL, absorbs coaching, studies defenses, and then either becomes a starter or is traded. Browns insider Jason Lloyd framed it this way. Had Sanders accepted a backup stint, the Ravens could have built his stock and then dealt him to a team that needed a starter. The quiet development path often builds better longevity. Instead, Sanders and his camp burned that bridge. The message was broadcast that he would not settle for a backup role. That's a high-stakes strategy when dealing with scouts and decision-makers. Now, the Browns have Joe Flacco and rookie Dillon Gabriel ahead of him on the depth chart. The front office's willingness to wait before trusting Sanders in meaningful games is strong. That patience may become his cross to bear. And here's the twist. Shedeur might not get a second chance to make a first impression. NFL teams aren't always forgiving. If he's not ready when the moment comes, it might not come again. So when critics say that rejecting backup roles was a misstep, they point to what might have been lost. Time, patience, gradual development in a safer environment. As of now, Sanders hasn't seen meaningful regular season snaps. He's technically quarterback 3, an emergency option. Deion has said he believes his son will start sometime this year. That's a vote of confidence. But confidence must be matched by performance. For a player like Sanders, the margin for error is very thin. If he's going to make the leap, he must first address the core critiques. He has to process faster, not wait on reads. He must throw before the window closes. He must improve his mechanics, sharpen his footwork, and ensure every ball leaves his hand with precision. He needs to dive deep into film, study relentlessly. Mental reps are the only way to match game speed without being on the field. Above all, he needs to earn trust. If the coaching staff sees growth, they might shift the narrative. He's walking a tightrope. If he progresses, he might silence the doubters and prove the gamble was genius. If he doesn't, the critics will only grow louder. This isn't just a story of a young man under pressure. It's a story of high-stakes ambition. Shedeur Sanders didn't want to wait. He wanted to lead, and now he must prove he was right to bet on himself. Whether that story ends in triumph or tragedy is still unwritten, but we're all watching to find out.
And then Deion, pre-draft, went on and crapped on like the 4 or 5 bad teams that were interested. I mean, if your son or daughter is going to the market and you're a famous mom or dad and you say, listen, we're not going to work for any startup.
The NFL world was stunned when Shedeur Sanders, once projected as a top 10 draft pick, fell all the way to the 5th round. In the aftermath, sports media heavyweight Colin Cowherd quickly entered the conversation, blasting the Sanders family's draft day decisions. According to Cowherd, this wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a self-inflicted setback. And at the center of the firestorm was Deion Sanders. The controversy wasn't about Shedeur's talent or stats. It stemmed from a revealing moment during an episode of the New Heights podcast hosted by Jason and Travis Kelce. Deion Sanders openly admitted that both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens reached out with interest on draft day. But the Sanders family declined those offers because Shedeur didn't want to sit as a backup.
Philly called us on draft day. They didn't mention that. I just let the cat out of the bag. Philly called us.
Okay, no, it's good. I didn't know that. Yeah, okay.
Who was it? Baltimore. And
I heard this, yeah.
That revelation set off a storm. Cowherd didn't hold back on his show, The Herd. He laid the blame squarely on Deion Sanders, criticizing his handling of the situation and questioning the advice he gave his son.
On why Shedeur Sanders dropped like a rock in the draft and ended up going in the 5th round with the Cleveland Browns, where he's now splitting scout team duties with Bailey Zappi.
Cowherd said bluntly, and the reason, Cowherd argued, wasn't about talent or ability. It was about pride, ego, arrogance. And that, he said, was on Deion.
Deion Sanders admitted the Eagles and the Ravens called his son before the draft, but he didn't want to be a long-term backup.
Cowherd pointed to Deion's quote during the podcast, "I never sat on the bench and learned a lot."
Deion is quoted as saying, hey, I never sat on the bench and learned a lot. I mean, who learns sitting on the bench? Oh, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers, Brady, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Phillip Rivers behind Breeze.
It was a jab at the traditional method of grooming quarterbacks, letting them sit, study, and grow. Cowherd countered that some of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, learned exactly that way. So why did Deion reject that proven formula for his son? Deion's confidence in Shedeur has never been in question. From the moment he coached him at Jackson State to their high-profile move to Colorado, it was clear Deion saw his son as more than just a player. He saw him as a star. But NFL teams don't draft family narratives. They draft prospects who fit their needs. And Shedeur, while talented, was entering a system that demands humility, patience, and a willingness to earn your stripes. Turning down teams like the Ravens and the Eagles wasn't just risky, it was unprecedented. The Ravens have one of the most stable front offices in the NFL, and the Eagles were fresh off a Super Bowl appearance. Either team could have provided Shedeur with elite mentorship, a strong quarterback room, and a pathway to success. Instead, the Sanders family bet on immediate opportunity over long-term development. And that decision backfired. When draft day finally arrived, Shedeur wasn't walking across the stage with a first-round jersey. He was watching his stock plummet, ultimately landing with the Cleveland Browns as the 144th overall pick. A massive drop from where most experts had predicted. Now, he's the third-string quarterback, sharing practice reps with Bailey Zappi. Not exactly the dream start for a young quarterback with superstar expectations. In the aftermath, Deion tried to soften the blow. On that same New Heights episode, he offered advice to his son: be patient, stay ready. He likened Shedeur's development to waiting for a cup of coffee to brew. Don't pull the cup off the darn until it's ready, he said.
I don't pull the coffee cup off the darn maker before it's ready. It's got to be.
It was a poetic analogy, but for many, it rang hollow, especially after he had just dismissed the importance of sitting and learning behind veteran quarterbacks. Cowherd didn't miss that contradiction. To him, Deion was talking out of both sides of his mouth. On one hand, telling his son to be ready. On the other, rejecting the very environments that foster readiness. And it wasn't just Cowherd raising eyebrows. NFL insiders and former players quietly questioned the decision as well. Some cited Shedeur's attitude during pre-draft interviews as a red flag. Others pointed fingers at Deion's media persona, his blunt, often unapologetic style, as a factor that turned off teams. In today's NFL, image matters. Teams want talent, but they also want players who fit their culture. And if a franchise gets the sense that a player or his inner circle isn't willing to play the long game, they'll move on. And that's exactly what happened here. To be clear, Shedeur Sanders is far from a lost cause. The NFL is filled with stories of players who were overlooked, underestimated, and eventually proved everyone wrong. Tom Brady was a sixth-round pick. Dak Prescott wasn't supposed to start for the Cowboys. Even Patrick Mahomes had to wait behind Alex Smith. The question isn't whether Shedeur has the talent, it's whether he's willing to adapt to the NFL's brutal learning curve. And perhaps more importantly, whether his father can step back and let that process unfold. Deion's career was defined by flash and swagger. But coaching and parenting in the NFL world requires something else: restraint. It means recognizing that not every battle is won on day one, and not every lesson comes from being in the spotlight. Cowherd's criticism may have sounded harsh, but it tapped into a larger concern among football analysts. Is Deion Sanders too involved in his son's career? And if so, is that involvement helping or hurting? Because while Deion's name brings attention, it also brings scrutiny. Every move, every quote, every headline becomes a part of the story. And in Shedeur's case, that story has now shifted from promise to pressure. It's not just about proving doubters wrong, it's about proving he's more than just Coach Prime's kid. In the coming months, Shedeur will have a chance to do just that. Injuries happen, opportunities arise, and if he's truly ready, as his father says he will be, he could still write a different ending to this draft day disappointment. But the road will be tougher now. The spotlight is harsher, the expectations are higher, and the margin for error is razor thin. And there's one more factor in this unfolding story: the NFL locker room. Veteran players know the league isn't just about skill, it's about respect. Walking into a room where everyone had to fight tooth and nail for their spot, only to be seen as the golden child of a famous father, can be a heavy burden. How Shedeur carries himself in that environment will shape how his teammates, and eventually his coaches, see him. Many young quarterbacks struggle not because they lack talent, but because they aren't prepared mentally for the grind. The NFL humbles even the best college players. But for those who embrace the process, who listen more than they talk, and who learn from the veterans around them, success is within reach. The question is, will Shedeur be one of them? And let's not forget the media pressure. Every pass Shedeur throws, every mistake he makes, will be analyzed more heavily because of who his father is. Fair or not, that's the reality of being in the spotlight. If he throws an interception in practice, it's not just a bad read, it's a headline. That kind of scrutiny can break a young player or sharpen him into a professional. For Deion Sanders, this moment is a test of philosophy. Does he double down on his approach, or does he start to trust the process that built so many Hall of Fame careers? For Shedeur, it's a test of patience, grit, and growth. Can he block out the noise, silence the critics, and focus on becoming the quarterback the league once thought he could be? One thing's certain, everyone's watching. And in the NFL, second chances don't come easy. Colin Cowherd may have called it not great parenting, but in the end, the NFL doesn't care about labels. It cares about results. And now, it's up to Shedeur Sanders to deliver. Because the next chapter of his story won't be written by his father, by Cowherd, or by podcast soundbites. It'll be written on the field. And that's where the truth always comes out. Saquon Barkley just said something about Daniel Jones that nobody saw coming. The Eagles star is now cheering harder for his old teammate than almost anyone else in the NFL, and his words are making everyone take notice. The Philadelphia Eagles superstar running back didn't hold back when reporters asked about his former teammate. Barkley looked them straight in the eye and said, "Outside of the Philadelphia Eagles and myself, I want no one else to perform at a high level besides Daniel Jones." Wait, what? The same Daniel Jones who was basically laughed out of New York? The quarterback who ended up running scout team as a safety during practice before getting cut? Yeah, that Daniel Jones. And Barkley isn't just being nice here. He's dead serious about it. Let's rewind and understand how we got to this point. Both Barkley and Jones started their careers as high draft picks for the New York Giants. For 5 long years, they battled together through some of the most frustrating football you've ever seen. While other teams were putting up points, the Giants' offense looked like they were playing with their hands tied behind their backs. Jones had one bright spot in 2022 when he actually looked like a franchise quarterback. That season, he posted a career-high 67.2% completion rate, threw for over 3,200 yards, and added 708 rushing yards with 7 rushing touchdowns. The Giants made the playoffs and even upset the Minnesota Vikings in the wild card round. Everything seemed to be clicking. But then the wheels fell off. The Giants handed Jones a massive 4-year, $160 million contract, and it turned into one of the worst deals in recent memory. From 2023 to 2024, Jones was brutal. Out of 57 quarterbacks who threw at least 300 passes, he ranked 42nd in completion rate, 54th in touchdown rate, and 53rd in passer rating. The injuries piled up and fans turned on him completely. Meanwhile, Barkley was dealing with his own drama. After carrying that offense for years, the Giants couldn't agree on a new contract. His final 2 seasons got rocky, and when free agency came around, New York let him walk. Where did he go? To their biggest rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. Both players left New York feeling like they had something to prove, and boy, have they ever proved it. Barkley's first season in Philadelphia was absolutely insane. He rushed for an NFL record 2,504 yards, including the postseason, and helped the Eagles win the Super Bowl. He was named Offensive Player of the Year, and reminded everyone just how good he really is when he's not playing behind a terrible offensive line. But here's where it gets really interesting. While everyone expected Barkley to bounce back, nobody saw what Daniel Jones was about to do in Indianapolis coming. After getting released by the Giants mid-season, Jones spent the rest of 2024 on the Minnesota Vikings practice squad. It was rock bottom for a guy who had been a starting NFL quarterback just months earlier. When the Indianapolis Colts offered him a 1-year deal worth $14 million, Jones took a pay cut from what he could have made elsewhere. He was betting on himself one more time.
Yeah, divisional games are big for sure. But yeah, being 3-0, I think is obviously where you want to be at this point, and play some good football. So fun start for us. We got to build.
The Colts already had Anthony Richardson, the 4th overall pick from 2023, waiting in the wings. Most people figured Jones would be a backup at best, but under head coach Shane Steichen, something magical started happening. Jones won the starting job outright, beating out the young Richardson in training camp. And then he went out and absolutely stunned the entire NFL. Through his first 2 games with Indianapolis, Jones completed 71.4% of his passes for 588 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. His passer rating of 111.1